pleasure to introduce to you the founding dean of the School of Design here at SaSTech, Professor Tom Kvan, who's himself a contributor to design theory, among other things, and who has been a most encouraging supporter of the idea of putting together this event to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the publication of Rittel and Weber's article. And to give our symposium the appropriate framing, I would like to invite Tom to kick this off by saying a few words about how this symposium matters and how it fits into the bigger picture here at the School of Design. Tom.
Very good. Thank you, Tom, for the introduction. And thank you especially for organizing this symposium. Right? The concept of the wicked problem has just become a cliche. Businesses, governments, and academics talk about wicked problems and the need for large teams to tackle them. Climate change, poverty, whatever it is big and hairy. The speaker is too lazy to articulate it and names it a wicked problem. It's also gained a moral overtone that perhaps is intended to garner these large sums of money in order to support the big teams to solve the problem. In these popular renderings, the key concept of the wicked problems is fundamentally misunderstood. Articles have appeared with titles such as Wicked Problems and How to Solve Them. This symposium is a chance to examine that concept and appreciate the insights. Rittel seems to develop the idea of wicked problems over a period of time. The first time the term emerges in print is that article by West Churchman in 1967, where he quotes Rittel as having used the term in a recent seminar. So it's obviously on Rittel's mind before we ever see Rittel himself write it down. Some of these ideas are presented by Rittel in other contexts. For example, in 1971, he was writing about ill-behaved problems as distinct from well-defined, and noted that for these, the solutions are not right or wrong, and there's no stop rule. Now, these are attributes later ascribed to wicked problems. In 1972, in his address in Oslo, where he presented the paper on the planning crisis, the systems analysis of the first and second generations, Rittel uses the terms tame and wicked. So Rittel and Weber then developed the idea a bit further in 1973, when they identified wicked problems as where proposed solutions often turn out to be worse than the symptoms. And that was a great insight. And they set out at that point the 10 rules that have come to define wicked problems. The period in which Rittel and others developed this concept is one in which the orthodoxy is illustrated by Hermann Simon's definitive description of design as the systemic search within a bounded solution space. Girl also has a similar understanding of design, dividing problems into well-structured or ill-structured, with design addressing the latter problem, ill-structured, by following a rational hierarchical approach, moving from problem structuring through preliminary design to refinement and detailed design. So the idea of wicked problems encouraged a complete rethinking of design processes and the recasting of their methods in a very different light. According to Bezjanak, the move is from design as a series of subsystems to design as an argumentation. Argumentation, he explains, is the exposition of views points of view from all involved, and the enlightenment of the priorities of the problem. Now, the difficulty with this position, as Buchanan noted in 1995, is that each participant then has their own position from which to argue, and different modes of argumentation, and these just become irreconcilable. But Rittel and Weber anticipated this. They captured this in their rule number 9. The existence of a discrepancy representing a wicked problem can be explained in numerous ways. The choice of explanation determines the nature of the problem's resolution. That's a restatement of a point he makes in the 72 paper, where he compares tame and wicked problems. In this, he advances the argument that the understanding of the problem is linked to the solution. Thus, the way we understand a situation changes the possible solutions, and the solution changes the understanding. In other words, he paints this circle connecting understanding and solutions. And for me, this is a key insight of all of this that discussion. It's akin to the principle of interference in quantum physics. Your first act in design changes the potential of every other potential act. And that was a major insight. I summarize this as a change that contrasts Herb Simon's definition of design as searching for how things should be, as distinct from Rittel and others who state how things could be, all things considered. So the articulation of wicked problems sits in this transition, the 1960s design methods and design machine discussion, to the position that was more fully explored in the 1980s of design as a conversation. Although conversation theory was being developed by Gordon Pask and others around the same time as Rittel was articulating the wicked, design as a conversation gained widespread exposure in design theory when Donald Schoen turned his attention to design education and architecture and urban planning, and the same realm as Rittel was working in. Schoen's exposition of reflective learning in design, his championing of problem-based learning afforded design education a very broad exposure into government policy and elsewhere. This, I thought, was particularly important as design developed more into a collaborative activity, and internet communication became even more available, then indispensable in recent years, as we understand the strength of conversational reflective approaches in design as opposed to systemic. In the 1972 paper, Rittel also discusses the paradoxes of rationality, where he set up the discussion between the wicked and the tame. He argued that design cannot come as to definitive outcomes, because in any design challenge, there's no definitive starting point, and there's no definitive ending point. So design can't provide solutions. It only provides propositions. While wicked problems are perhaps Rittel's most widely known contribution, his other reflections on design have great value. For example, we're engulfed in this conversation at the moment about the value of AI and the way AI is going to be either displacing all possible designers, or it's going to become an endless source and font of wonderful designs. The assumption design simply deals with tame problems and AI can solve it. So the infatuation with AI reflects this larger problem we face in design research, that the past is already forgotten. Every technological change is addressed as another wonderful panacea. We should be able to readily recall prior examination of ideas, for example, of design machines in the last 70 years, such as that by Steiny and March in 1981. In which they noted design machines have three essential components. The generator is absolutely recognized and central, but it's the evaluator and the perceptor, which are essential to a design machine. And more importantly, that there is a loop from the evaluator back to the perceptor. In other words, they've identified a similar context as Rittel. When you change the output, you change the input, and therefore the generator needs to change as well. And you can't have a simple machine. The input through a generator generates an output, and therefore we have design. So this informs us, I think, that AI is not going to be a tool to address all design challenges, nor is any other simple tool, because they can't. Wickedness of design challenges resist solving the simple tools. Put to rest the AI discussion. This fundamentally is important as design faces, I think, the issues of ecology and sustainability. And that's why it's particularly pertinent today. We come to recognize that design has inflicted huge damage through simplistic approaches, systemic approaches, treating everything as tame problems. So this symposium, therefore, is very timely. Rittel himself noted in 1988 that the science of design has three tasks: to further develop the theories of design, to learning about the reasoning of designers. Second, to pursue empirical inquiries into how plans come about and what effects of plans are in comparison to what they're intended. And thirdly, to look for tools to support designers for their work. That remains the task today. He noted in closing that the human mind is fallible, that we should always find ways to amplify its abilities, even if it's only to keep us from falling prone to our idiosyncrasies. He had a sense of humor. So how does this relate to starting a design school in Shenzhen? Let me speak a little bit about what we've done here. Our school was founded by the Shenzhen government to contribute to the economic development of this region, capturing greater value in the industrial process through design, and to develop new industries and opportunities through design research. So design's held in this regard around the world, and it's employed regularly by governments for economic development, such as Denmark, Japan, South Korea, Great Britain. This development will not happen, however, if we address design solving as solving tame problems, or even if we consider design as the act of taming ill-defined problems. We need to embrace the world of the wicked and the complex and approach design as a means of negotiating the adaptive and changing world in which we as humans have an obligation to participate, but not to dominate in our evolving future environment. So our students here have all scored well in the Gaokao. It's currently underway with 12.9 million students at this moment sitting in examination halls. Our students are admitted to SUSTEC with their high Gaokao scores and additional examinations in physics. And so in their first year, they take part in a common curriculum of advanced mathematics, physics, computer science, as well as English. And at the end of that year, they choose a major from a selection of 36, of which design is one. And at the beginning of the second year, we introduce them to design. This is the first time for most of them they've faced the challenge of a wicked problem. To this point, their education has been prescribed by well-formed problems or ill-formed problems that can be transformed into well-formed problems and therefore can be solved. Instead, design asks them to address challenges, not problems. That these challenges have no solutions, but are open opportunities. It's that certainty is replaced by flux, and the challenges they realize are contexts of rich potential. That's the inherent nature of design. That is, with the untamed, we have great design adventures. So, welcome to the symposium. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to explore that here in Shenzhen. I look forward to the papers, discussions that will arise and the subsequent dissemination of these discussions to more people in the conversation. I will end by just thanking everyone here for participating, and especially to my colleagues who helped to realize this opportunity. Of course, Tom Fisher is the chair, Peng Chung and Chris, Candy Hare and Wan Pang, who have all contributed here on site to making this a wonderful opportunity. And I thank also our administrative colleagues who put enormous effort into ensuring that this is online and happening. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining in.
Great, thank you.
Would you like to take a question or two? We have another.
Happy
5
to.
minutes. You were fast. All right. So is anyone from the audience interested in asking a question? I think Tom, more than anyone else, is greatly able to show the trajectory of these thoughts over time, because you have been involved with that quite closely for many years. And I think you're right. We become amnesiac very, very quickly. And we forget what has happened, and we are bound to reinvent the wheel. And in the process, we forget to really think ahead or really think things through, because every generation is busy with another main technology. We just discovered AI, and of course, we forgot the meta level of addressing these issues.
Is a constant challenge, as Tom Maver helpfully pointed out some 15, 20 years ago in his paper, The 7 Deadly Sins, that we human beings have a wonderful ability to forget. And that allows young PhD students to once again launch into the same problem that someone has addressed some 20 years before, sometimes with new outcomes, but sometimes not. I think my concern with wicked problems is in part too that the hijacking of the term. There is such richness in the subject that it really warrants re-examination from the fundamentals again. When I was working at a prior university, the university decided that wicked problems were a way to frame the research agenda for the whole university. And it became essentially the big hairy issues, big umbrella things, and then we could just chuck lots of people at each of them. And they never understood the nature of a wicked problem, which is, of course, it's changing. And that, as Rittel said, your first intervention changes everything thereafter. And you cannot set it out as a series of subsystems to be investigated. There's a great value in that framing that's worth bringing back out. For design, that's where the richness of design is. And I think for a lot of research, that is also where the richness of research is.
I guess just like wicked problems, also the term design has had a very similar trajectory, also adopted by just about any discipline. And we have not only to reclaim the wickedness for us, we probably also have to reclaim specialty of design, because design is now anywhere from business to dentistry.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I think that's one of the dangers with the popularity of design thinking, is that it reduces design thinking back to a formulaic, simple system, whether you follow the double diamonds or whatever other models you wish to use. But as long as you turn the handle and put someone through the various steps, they turn into a designer and they churn out designs. So reclaiming the richness in the potentiality and the ambiguity is one of the never-ending tasks, I think, of design research.
Thank you. And before I keep going on having a private conversation with Tom here, is there anyone else interested in asking a question? I hope that I've just verbalized some things that are on everybody's mind.
But keep things on time. We don't really have a lot of time, but I'm sure everyone will be visiting and revisiting these and other issues. So that's why I welcome the papers and the discussion.
Exactly.
Let's launch into it.
Right. Thank you so much, Tom, for taking the time to frame the event. It's a very small event, and we hope that the smallness of it can actually make us really talk to each other.